Welcome to Education in Time of War. I'm Rachel Raz, and today with me is Maya Wizel. Maya, thank you very much for joining me today from Israel.
Hi, happy to be here.
Yes, and I recently had the opportunity, Maya posted online a new report that she put together, and it's the title of it, it's Hope in the Lower Place on Earth. And I reached out to Maya, even though I knew Maya from the Boston area, and I asked her if she will join us to this podcast to share some of her very important work in the field of early childhood education, in particular. And before we start, Maya, I want to say a few words to introduce you to our audience. For those of you that don't know you, so Maya is an educational hacker. She challenges traditional ways of teaching and learning and act to change them in a various educational setting. Her Ph.D. is from Lesley University and specialized in adult learning, non-formal pedagogy and teacher education, and educational change. And a recent research about bridging formal and non-formal education was published, and here is the book.
You got it already.
Yes. The Neckerchief Revolution, how tying together formal and non-formal pedagogy makes for better education. Maya is a slasher. She is a researcher, a speaker, a podcaster, and a published author. And she continuously learns new things every day. And also she teaches us every day. And I'm delighted again, Maya, for you coming here today. So Maya, maybe you can share with me, with the audience. I printed this booklet that you put together about the story of hope in the lower part of the world. And right now it's in Hebrew. So I was fortunate, I speak Hebrew, so I printed it and I was able to read. And I know that now you're also working on translation.
Yeah, it's in the process.
Maybe you can share a little bit about this project with our audiences.
Yeah, so I'll take you 6 months back, October 7th in Israel. A huge storm. This war came out of nowhere for me at least, and for many other people. And I found myself helpless, like as many others. And I felt the need to do something that I can help. And through friends, I got into the Dead Sea area. Now, I want to show you a picture of the Dead Sea. It took me a few weeks to take this picture. It didn't happen right after I arrived there, but so this I took a few weeks after I arrived to the Dead Sea, and it looks very serene, so beautiful, so calm. The reality was so different than this. But what happened is that thousands of people in Israel in October 7th were evacuated from their homes and sent to hotels. Now, you imagine hotels, those Dead Sea hotels are very luxurious, spa hotels, and suddenly a whole community stays in hotels, and this has become their safe place, their only home. So it took me a few weeks to take this picture because it's so different from the situation that happens in the hotels. And I can show you a few more pictures that I took just while, and I'll talk, but this has a small sign and it says Kibbutz Kisufim. It's a name of one of the kibbutzim. So the whole kibbutz stayed in the hotel, and this became their home. And this is a hotel I'll focus more about, of a community called Kibbutz Be'eri. So Kibbutz Be'eri is one of the kibbutzim that suffered a tremendous loss, many hostages, maybe many people killed. And this is like, as you can see, it looks like a fine hotel, but inside there's a memorial area, and it doesn't look anything like the hotels we're used to. And
Maya, I'll interrupt you for a second for our audience that are not familiar with this war. I just want to say a few words. On October 7, 2023, thousands of Hamas terrorists entered the border of Israel from Gaza. and arrived very early in the morning, like 6:30 a.m., into people's home, abducted, killed, slaughtered many people. One of them was this kibbutz Be'eri. For those of you who don't know what kibbutz, it's a small community, very connected and like a warm, usually farming communities, but not always. And for many hours, many people were staying in safe rooms, trying to survive. And later on, they were evacuated to this area, the lowest place of Earth, which is the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are not familiar, this was the situation, including lots of children and elderly and a full community. So, you know, just like when you think about it, think about your own home, your own community, wherever you are in the world. At 6 a.m., somebody is entering your house, kidnapping your loved one or killing your loved one, and you run for your life and trying to find a new home, in this case, in hotels.
And you arrive to the hotel only with your pajamas. You have nothing on you. So the first days were shocked but heartwarming at the same time, because all those hotels were filled with mountains of donations, of clothes, of shampoos, of everything, anything you can imagine that a person needs. And I have a very good friend. Her name is Inbal, and her sister was evacuated from Be'eri. And she arrived the day after to this hotel, and she saw many people in the lobby. It was, as I describe it, quiet and noisy at the same time, because people were shocked and all the kids were running around. And she realized we have to do something. Now, she's a CEO of a chain of schools in Israel. And she started a week after 7 classes of preschool, the same original names and preschools that used to be in Kibbutz Be'eri. She convinced friends and other educators to relocate to the Dead Sea, because I want to tell you something about the Dead Sea. It's very serene. There are many hotels. There's no people living here. It's not like a big city. It's not like Boston or Brookline or Newton. So there's no educators, no early childhood educators. There's no one there to help and start and build those systems. So what she's done, I'll show pictures from, so she rented tents. Do you know those tents when you have a wedding and you're afraid it's going to rain? She rented tents and put them outside of the lobby of the hotel and created kindergartens. And what it did, one of the educators told me, she said, we're not taking care just of the kids, we're taking care of the whole community, because the parents had few hours to breathe, few hours to process what they're going through, few hours to process the loss. And what you see here is an active education system. It took a while. It wasn't at one day. It took a while for kids to trust the educators. It took a while for parents to let go. So at the beginning, it was with the parents, because obviously after you experience this kind of trauma, you're not letting your kid away from you. And this process of starting those preschools was very successful. And after a few weeks, and I want to say there are many hotels in the Dead Sea, all were with evacuated families and communities. And as you said, elderly and special education kids and teenagers, everyone was there. And the Minister of Education and the city called Sderot. Sderot is a big city, unlike the kibbutz, which is a smaller community, is a very big city that had people evacuated to over 10 towns all over Israel. But they asked Inbal and her team to start more preschools like this, and this is where I came into the picture. And if you want to start those, you need educators. And in my back in my background, I used to work in human resource management. And as I told you, I was shocked. All my lectures were canceled. Everything was canceled. And I was just looking for a way to help. And I said, I'll help you. I'll help you recruit those educators. And this is what I've done with her team. And it took us a few weeks, but we started those preschools in additional hotels with different ways. Sometimes it was tents, sometimes it was, I can show pictures, it was in a conference room. I'll show you.
And Maya, when we're talking this week, on April 7 was 6 months since the war began, and
Yeah.
this community is still in the hotel, my understanding.
Yeah, so Be'eri is an example for a community that decided they cannot go back home, and they decided they do not want to go to a temporary place. They want to stay as a community, and they decided they're going to stay until the end of the school year. So I was there 2 weeks ago. They're still there after 6 months. They have the hotels in general were amazing. No one talks about it, but from an organization that aimed to entertain people and have them for 3 days of a vacation, they became community managers. They have laundry rooms, and they have, for instance, in some communities, people felt like we are crazy that we cannot cook for our kids. We cannot make their dinner as they like. And some of those hotels have days where guests, they're not guests already, they're like, it's their home, can cook in the kitchen. They have laundry room. They have a place for community meetings. So all this story about hotels is amazing because it's an industry that had to transform itself immediately, and they're doing an amazing. I salute them. You know, you have people, usually when you go on vacation to a hotel, you leave at the morning, you go sightseeing, and you come back at night to sleep. Here, this is their home. This is where they belong all the time. So in some places it was tents. Some places there was no room. So we just took with many other organizations, I have to admit, many other volunteers. All these facilities are from an organization called Hamal Ezrachi, Achim Laneshek, and they just build, all volunteering, things like this in the middle of the hotel, and ordered a new set of what a preschool setting looked like. And the team went over many donations, and it was like in one night, and it looked like this. Now, this was taken at the nighttime, but I think it's the only preschool where outside the window there's a swimming pool, because this is a hotel. It wasn't meant to be a preschool. So we had those safe spaces for kids and for families. There were many challenges. It wasn't acoustically, there are no bathrooms inside, there's no sink. It's very challenging, but still it became a safe place for kids in those communities.
And I think that's the important thing, Maya, when we think about education in general, we think what's needed.
Yeah.
You know, I remember like during COVID, you know, how educator adapted because the big question was, what do kids need? What the community needs, and the ability to transform, to adapt is very, very crucial. And I would say it's a good skill regardless to a time of war. Many people are fixed on one way, and they want to do things the same, and they said, but it's never the same. The world is always evolving, sometimes very rapidly and in very traumatic way, but the world is changing. So there is definitely something we can learn about transitioning and transforming.
Definitely, and you showed my book before, and we saw later on, I haven't said it, but later on I became part of a research group that conducted a qualitative research. So we interviewed around 100 educators that were in hotels. So some of the examples I'll give are already from this research, and many of them had a background in non-formal education systems. So they work at summer camps. And as you said, they know to be agile, they know to adapt, they know to work in place that doesn't look like school or preschool, and they know to work with what they have and not just with, you know, the optimum situation. So definitely the spaces was a big deal. And I want to talk about the people, because as I said, there were no educators. And when we talked before, you asked me what made me write this report or small book. And I think there were two things. One, I needed to process what I was going through, because I stayed there for 6 weeks. I was living in the same hotel with people I had a home to go back to. They didn't, but I was living there. And I felt like I need to process this experience and make sense into it, to a crazy situation. And the other reason was I met an amazing educators. I felt privileged to know them, and I wanted to shout to the world what they have done. Because as one of the parents told me, he told me, you know, we were evacuated to here, but you chose to leave your homes and all the educators and be here with us. You didn't have to. And I want to remind you, you gave a little perspective about the war. Israel is a small place, and we had sirens all over Israel. So the war touched all of us. All my kids were in the army at the time, in the military at the time of war. We had young staff members who had partners fighting. So we were all in an emotional place, and they chose to come and do something and have be meaningful. And I wanted to show what they've done, because I think they've done an amazing and brave thing.
Yeah, and for those that are not familiar with Israel, Israel it's almost about 10 million people, a little bit less than that. About 250,000 people were evacuated from their home, both from the north and from the south. And people still, many of them, about over 100,000 people can't really go back to their home. Some of them are because they're still under war, or some of them are just ruined, burned, they can't go back there. And it's important, it's very large, the scale. Sometimes when people look from outside at the news, they don't really understand that this is still unfolding. The trauma, when you mentioned that your kids are serving, it's like in Israel, because it's a small country, it's mandatory, everybody needs to go. And it's called Israel Defense Forces, because it's really to defend the people that are sitting there. It's a country, it's a nation that's looking for peace and to work together. And it's unfortunately, this is a tough neighborhood with different values. And so you mentioned, these people, like leaving their home and coming to help, because you and the other Inbal and the other people identify that we need to think about our children. We can't, it's not only that their regular day stopped, their regular life, they're also under trauma. There are sirens, there are missiles. Some of the children lost their parents or grandparents or friends or teachers. They lost their home. They lost, their stuffed animal, their everything. So it's not just like even how do we continue the value of education in a normal time, but this is like traumatized children, and how do we minimize in some way the long-term damage?
So one thing that we've done, and I think at the beginning, you don't have a manual for this. So some of the things were just gut feeling or intuition, and then we realized it was smart. So one of the things was, many people wanted to volunteer and say, I'll come for 2 days, I'll come for 3 days. And we said, no, those kids need stability. And they need to be every day with the same place, with the same kids, and with the same adults. Now, no one knew how long it's going to last, but we asked people to come at least for 4 or 5 weeks. And usually they stayed longer. But this was one thing. We understood there were so many volunteers. You can't imagine. At some point, the hotels closed their gates and said, we don't want any more people coming, because they're coming and going. And it was noisy, because they came with very good intentions, but with their guitars and with their puppets. And I can tell you the iguana story, okay? First week of the war, I go out of this hotel that I showed the picture, and I see 2 people carrying a huge aquarium with iguanas. So this is what they do for a living, and they wanted to make the kids happy with iguanas. But imagine all those iguanas and clowns, and we wanted to create quiet place with stability and with the same adults. And this was, I now realize how smart it was. And I had to say to people who said, we want to come, we don't want to get paid, just let us come for a week. And I had to say no, because we wanted the kids to see familiar faces every day. So this was one part that was really helpful. Another one was, you know, in a regular world, you work in teacher education, I work in teacher education, we have like a long process of pre-service training. The pre-service here was 1 day at top, sometimes 2 hours. And what we try to do in this 1 day or 2 or 3 hours is not to get them scared, because no one of the educators, no matter some of them were retired with 30 years of experience, no one was experienced working in this situation. And we did 2 things. One, we helped them, you know, let's say the war is a storm. So in a storm, if you're a tree, you want to have roots. So we help them we help them remind themselves, what are their roots? What are you good at? What have you done before? And just use this. This is good enough for now. You don't have to know or become a new educator for times of crisis. Just be the educator you know how to be. And it really helped them because, and one of them, I'll show you a picture. One of them said, you know, and of course it took a few days to organize, but one of them said, you know, I am also, I do farm therapy. I work with people in soil and plants, and look what the amazing team organized for her. So they made big pots with soil, and the kids were able to experience this, but also the educator was in her comfort zone. She had her roots and she could use it. Another educator, for instance, she's also an artist. So, and she said, you know, I can work with a group, but maybe I can decorate those like ugly improvised walls. And she started working one-on-one with kids. And this is what she's done for a few weeks. So I said we need roots, but we were also very flexible. You know, trees in storm, they need to be flexible. So we were flexible enough to give the educators the environment as much as possible that they can act and be there at their best.
And, you know, it reminded me, Maya, during COVID, you know, during the world pandemic, I also started doing a Zoom for educators, and we had, I think, thousands of people. And I said, you know, there is no book about how to run, you know, preschool during pandemic. Let's ask what parents need, what kids needs. And we start having these conversations because we needed to adapt and fast.
Yeah, and what we can give, you know, we can give only what we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you talked about the experience working with trauma. So in addition to the reminder of you have what to give, you have what it needs, we gave lots and lots of training since day one. At the beginning, every day. So every day, the activity, the day closed in a staff meeting, always in a circle, always processing, always having time to share, always having time to raise problems and solve them together. So we realized that the training is critical. Sometimes it was with in-house, I can show one picture, in-house forces, and sometimes we used psychologists and therapists that helped us process what we're going through. So this is like one occasion of a staff meeting that happened at night. So it's like summer camps. In summer camps, you're there 24/7. Now, since Dead Sea was so remote, unlike other places in Israel, by the way, so they all ate breakfast together and lunch and dinner and spent the afternoon together and shared rooms most of the time because there was lack of hotels rooms in the area. So the 24/7 made a close team together. They became so close, even though we had people from the age of 22 to 65 with range of experiences, range of background. They became a very tight group, and they became as a support group, which was critical in those times.
And I like the metaphor or that you're talking about the overnight summer camps, that you're stuck in the middle of nowhere and you're together.
And you're together, and you have this sense of belonging and the sense of shared responsibility. And they said stuff like, they said things like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing something important. I feel meaningful now. So, and one of them said, I'm getting back more than I'm giving. So what else more? And I can understand it, because I felt the same. I felt like instead of sitting at home watching the news all the time, I get to do something for other people, something that is meaningful for the entire community. So I get this saying and this feeling.
Yeah. What can you tell us, a little bit about the reaction of the parents or the kids for the spaces?
All the answers are right. Some parents were like, wow. All the parents were very appreciative. Obviously, some kids had, I want to explain the reality. So the reality is, it's a big hotel, there's the lobby, and one floor under, there's the preschool. Now, the kids know that their parents are upstairs. It's not like their parents went to work or drove somewhere. They're upstairs. So it made lots of interesting things happening with limits, with borders. Can I run out and go look for my parents? So no, you can't. Or as a parent, can I send my 5 years old to pick up the 3 years old from the preschool? No, you can't. So there are many challenges raised by the fact that we're in a hotel. In one hotel, we wanted the kids to be out a little bit. Now, there was a playground in the hotel, but it was very close to the pool with no fence. Now, can you imagine the responsibility of taking 23 years old outside? So it took us a week and a half until we trusted ourselves to go next to the pool without any kid running in. So many challenges and maybe many creative solutions of the educators.
Maya, do you have any maybe pictures so we can see the classroom? I know that you showed the walls, you showed a little bit the furniture that was bought and brought in. And again, it was that there is no, no community can actually look at this, our conversation. Kama said, let's cut and paste. But I think, the idea of children are important, how do we support them, stability of the team, bringing people that are capable to be flexible and adaptive. These are some things that are important. And the support, the mentally, professionally support that you are getting as a community.
Yeah.
So
I want to show. I want to show this picture, and this picture I can. It's it's hard because we were so busy doing, so we didn't take many pictures, and also I cannot show faces of kids. So this picture is can serve me talk about many things. First of all, as you can see, it's a hotel carpet, and it's challenging working with kids, and you have this carpet all the time, and I want to talk about this educator as an example for one of the educators said, we're like a mosaic, we're very different. So I want to talk about a different kind of educators. And those are educators who were part of the communities evacuated. So most of the educators we brought in from outside to the hotels. But as you can imagine, in the evacuated communities, there were teachers, there were kindergarten, there were all those professions. And we really tried and offered, and in some cases succeeded, to educators from the community to come and work in our educational spaces. And sometimes they were not available. Mentally, emotionally, it was too much. But when they were available, it was crucial. First of all, people knew them in the community, they trusted them. And secondly, they were able to communicate to us, the outsiders, the reality of living, the reality of how they feel, how the parents live. They were able to help us make our work better. And for them, and few educators that I interviewed told me this, for them, you know, you're in a hotel, it sounds magical. As they said, we're never going to hotel again because you feel helpless. You don't do anything for yourself. Someone cooks you, someone cleans your room, and they took charge back. And this is very meaningful in time of trauma, the feeling that you're taking the responsibility on things and you're active and you're proactive. And I think that for those educators, working with kids, which they love and they used to, was part of their healing process. I didn't look into it, but I am sure, I have a very educated guess that for them, the reality was better because they had a purpose. They got rest in the morning. They helped other kids. They were meaningful for the other parents. And it was great having them in the team because the team wasn't, you know, we are the outsider coming to help you. But no, we are with you. We are all together helping you as a community.
No, this is very, very, first of all, again, very inspiring, everything that you are sharing, Maya. I think the giving the responsibility for people that are went through trauma or still during this situation of trauma, it's very important. Very often we tend to do for them.
Yeah.
Because in some time it's a survival. They need to. Somebody need to take care of them. Somebody need to move them, bring a bus.
You need to offer. Not everyone were able to take this opportunity, and sometimes it took longer. And then our educators left and they fill the spaces. We tried not to overtake, obviously.
Yeah. And I know, Maya, you mentioned that you're doing research. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What maybe some of the finding or some of the vision where we will be able to read about it or learn from you?
We're still working on it, but few of the things I mentioned earlier was the people who came immediately. I'm talking about the first phase, the first few weeks, where people who, first of all, had the urge, they felt like this is what they should do. Many of them had non-formal education background. All of them felt that they can do it, that they have some things in their background or experience or confidence that they can do it, even though, you know, I interviewed them over the phone. So the conversation usually was like this. What age of kids will I have? I don't know. Who will I work with? I have no idea. How many kids? No clue. Where my preschool area will be? I don't know. Where will I sleep? I promise you, you will have a place to sleep. I don't know where. And this was the few interviews. Later, I just said at front, I don't know anything. I know you're needed. I know you won't be alone. And I have a feeling you can succeed in it after hearing from you. But they came to the unknown. So I think there was something about embracing uncertainty, exactly like you said in COVID, understanding that many things are out of control, but they are kids, they are educators, will make it work somehow. So this was one finding. The other one was, again, educators that had a broad spectrum of pedagogical toolbox. So they knew how to work with kids, with adults, outside, inside, to work through theater, to work through drama, to work through soil, whatever. If you had more things you can play with, so they it was easier for them. And I think another thing that was raised is the willingness to learn. So even if I'm an educator with 30 years of experience, as you said, I've never been in this situation. And the ability to come, and one of them said, you know, an educator, she has a chain of preschools, and she said, I came here, I'm back to basic. I'm looking in the eyes of the kids and I do what I know how to do. I'm not a big manager anymore. And they were willing to learn from professionals. They were willing to learn from each other. They were willing to learn from the kids themselves what they need. So they were very open.
And Maya, I think this is a great segue, later on, if you, you said looking at the eyes of the kids. And it's not just in time of trauma and in time of war. I find it everywhere in so many places around the world, we don't do that. And the world is going through changes with AI, with technology, with fast pace of information, changes of families, changes of communities, and we're not looking enough. This is actually something that I'm constantly advocating in some of my work, is to stop, put all of the books aside, look at the child, look at the society you live in, what's going on right now. So yes, in your case, it's very extreme situation of war, and all of this podcast is about education in time of war, but we can argue that the world is constantly.
I cannot agree more.
Yes, and I look forward to reading your book, and looking also for the English translation of this, because I think people will.
Coming soon. We're working on it.
But I'm glad that at least we have this conversation so people can learn about it. But for me, the big message is like looking at the children's eyes. Everybody get out of your comfort zone and see what you're good at. How can I contribute to the world? Because again, lots of people are busy protesting against things or asking from the government to do things. And here it's people like you and many other people that just came and said, we are doing because we care about the children, we care about our society, and we're just doing.
Yeah.
So Maya, I want, before we end, is there anything that maybe you planned that you wanted to say, or any picture or story that you wanted to share with us? I want to give you the opportunity.
We talked about a lot. I feel like I'm still processing, even though it's been a few months. But since I'm reading all those transcript of interviews, so I feel like I'm reliving. I'm thinking.
And that's okay. Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
I think what you said now, it's also about being authentic and being personalized, because I talked about, for instance, preschools for two communities. They were so different communities, and we had to give different answers to their needs. And I feel like sometimes we need, as professionals, as leaders, as educators, we need to understand, as you said, we don't have the answers. We have to ask questions and listen very carefully and adapt accordingly. I feel like we need to listen, and you work with educators of early childhood. I work usually with teens, young adults, and adults, and I can tell you the same with adults. We don't really ask them or listen to what they need. Sometimes they don't know what they need because they're not used to being asked. Like, okay, you're the professor, you should tell me what I should learn. And no, I want to hear what's relevant. And I know this is the way you teach as well. That's why we connect so well. I want to hear what you need. I want you to have ownership on the learning process, but you have to ask yourself, you have to reflect. That's a whole, but it's the listening carefully. And I think another very strong thing that came out, and again, it's relevant to wartime, but also regular time, it's the issue of teamwork. I feel like as an educator, not only in wartime, you cannot do this job alone. You need to have team members. You need to have someone to consult with, someone to think with, someone to reflect to, someone to learn from, because there's like, that's why I'm in education. It keeps changing. It keeps being fascinating. There's no one classroom like the other. There's no one year like the other. So I feel like this thing of teams, it's not always built in our organizations. Sometimes there are like non-formal teams that I find, but it's not built in our schedules. And I feel like what we did right there was giving them the group, giving them the team, and giving them the time to be a team that works together.
And in some way, and we can also, first of all, I want to invite you to record more as your research evolve and to talk about it.
Sure.
But one of my bigger point of view in my work, I call it the ecosystem of education. It's all of the different players, including the society we live in, the values. You mentioned so many players, the teacher, the children, the hotel, the people like you, the researchers also that came in, the volunteers, the too many volunteers that came that you had to push back. It's all of this like ecosystem that we work with,
Yeah.
that in any situation is very important. I'm actually adding next week to a conference in Vancouver, and my presentation there is going to be about the ecosystem of education. It's international, that I invite every community to really think about their own ecosystem when we think about our children, and the outcome also the society that we build. So I want to invite you again, Maya, first of all, to thank you
Thank you so much.
for sharing with us this very important work to invest in the children and in this very tough time. And I hope that they will be able to go back to their home, and that this trauma will be as minimized as possible, and will help them grow from this lower place on earth to have hope. And yeah, and thank you very much for sharing with us and documenting it.
Thank you for inviting me and for the smart questions and wise questions that made me think and reflect again and again.
Thank you very much, Maya. And for our audience, this is Education in Time of War. I'm Rachel Raz, and follow us for a more inspiring conversation like that. Thank you.